Comedy. Comedy is a stretchy term. Comedy can be extremely varied in style, types of humor, quality, etc. What's funny to me may not be funny to you. Still, I feel like most modern comedies are not funny. Every time I Google comedies to watch, all the mainstream ones are the exact opposite of what comedy should be. Letterboxd. Letterboxd is a review sharing website where only the most refined of film aficionados go to write. This shit sucked mega cockulus. Kevin Spacey gives Brad Pitt head. No clickbait. Everything is sex. Except sex. Which is tennis. Clearly, where all the funniest comedians go. Which gave rise to an idea for me. I will scour Letterboxd to find the most obscure and funny comedies based on user reviews. For this video, I scraped the entire Letterboxd website with a list of over 1 million movies. Now, as the title suggests, I am focusing on obscure comedies. Highly popular movies like Forrest Gump, Toy Story, Brazil and others, despite their high ratings, were excluded. I am also solely looking for comedies. I want movies that can make me laugh. A lot. As such, it is a very highly subjective list, and thus, due to my personal biases, I excluded all romantic comedies, as I found most of them to be focusing on the romantic side of the story rather than the comedic one. With this, let us begin the list with an absolutely hilarious movie in Bruges. Two assassins are sent to a small city in Belgium, Bruges. While waiting for their next mission, they're forced to take in the city while sightseeing and indulging in tourist activities. And to make matters even more weird, due to an error in planning, they're forced to share a single small room together in a hotel. The premise, absurd already, is what got me hooked. I don't want to spoil the movie too much to you. What I told you so far is pretty much only the first 20 minutes. The plot quickly changes direction from what you would expect based on the premise after that. If you get to this shot of Colin Farrell sitting on a bench in front of a playground, you're in for one of the funniest scenes I have seen in recent memory. I had to pause it and replay it 2 times because I was laughing so hard. Colin Farrell and Ralph Fiennes as always deliver a phenomenal performance. Every time I see a movie with either one of them, I know it will be a good one. The movie is directed by Martin McDonagh, who also directed, The 7 Psychopaths and The Banshees of Inisherin? If you don't know, the latter was praised as one of the best movies of 2022 and won several awards for Best Picture and Best Screenplay. The former is an amazing Tarantino-like action comedy with Sam Rockwell, who is my personal favorite comedic actor. Definitely check these 2 movies as they are extremely funny films, and if you want a good laugh, if you like absurd premises, and if you hate Belgium, then In Bruges is definitely for you. Laughter, tension, and lots of beavers. This is what awaits you in Hundreds of Beavers, probably the most unique movie I have seen from recent years. It has a silent film aesthetic to it, mixed in with some Looney Tunes shenanigans. Originally released in 2022 for film festivals, now in 2024 it is available on Amazon Prime. Definitely watch it. It is non-stop comedy. I have not laughed this much at a movie in a while. The movie follows Jean Kayak, a famous apple cider manufacturer, who one time during a party got a bit too drunk and destroyed his entire farm. He now has to survive in a snowy wilderness with nothing but his own 2 hands. The movie is highly absurd and feels more like a live-action cartoon than anything else. Jean catapults himself through the sky, fights beavers, and rides a giant snowball. Nothing can prepare you for the sheer insanity of this movie. The whole survival part has more of a game feeling to it, with Jean discovering new tools, buying new equipment, and slowly progressing to a master hunter. All the animals are played by humans in stuffed animal-like suits, which makes even the most violent scenes look comical. This film deserves a lot more attention, and it's definitely one of the best comedies I have seen ever. Keeping up with this trend of black and white movies, we have the 1942 To Be or Not to Be, a movie that highly satirizes the Nazi regime while the war was still ongoing during its production. The movie is over 8 years old and it is of course slightly dated now, but somehow most of the humor lands just as well today as it did almost a century ago. Its story is so absurd that even by modern standards, it's an incredibly creative comedy. The movie takes place in Nazi-occupied Poland. We follow an acting troupe as they impersonate various Nazi officials, important political figures, and eventually even Hitler himself. The story gets more and more ridiculous with every scene. In one moment, the main protagonist impersonates a Gestapo officer in front of a Polish spy, and in the next, he impersonates the same spy in front of the real Gestapo. Most of the jokes landed perfectly. Even the smaller jokes were hilarious. I think Taika Waititi took a lot of inspiration from this movie for his Jojo Rabbit. Now, if the movie is a bit too old for you and that puts you off, Mel Brooks made a decent remake in 1983. It tells the story with the same beats and moments, and it's not a bad remake. I think the original is definitely funnier, but Mel Brooks has the advantage of a bigger budget, of more modern filming practices, and having an already made movie to learn from. Thus, I think he improved on a lot of the weaker points of the original. And of course, his version features the absolute classic song about peace. Peace! Peace! Still, I do recommend you watch the original first. Speaking of Mel Brooks, within the top 500 comedies, there were 2 separate movies directed by him. He is a legendary comedic director that has somewhat fallen in obscurity in recent years. But according to my grandparents, he was one of the hottest directors in the 70s. Mel Brooks is one of the few people to win an Emmy, Oscar, Tony, and a Grammy within his lifetime. He is the father of the parody genre. I grew up watching movies like The Man in Tights, Spaceballs, and History of the World. However, on my list, in 25th place, I found Young Frankenstein, or rather, Young Frankenstein. It was a movie of his that I had not seen prior. I can see why it is his most highly rated film. It's a lot less of a slapstick comedy compared to his other works. Much more subtle, but still full of great jokes. It is a great parody of the 1920s adaptation of Shelley's Frankenstein. The movie does look dated, but as an effect rather than a defect. While filming, Brooks used a lot of the original adaptation's props, filmed on black and white film, and used techniques and transitions characteristic of the time. It is a great film and a great comedy that you should definitely watch. It's very quotable, and because of it, I can no longer pronounce Frankenstein correctly. Next up, we have a 2017 satire of the USSR regime, The Death of Stalin. The title is the setting. Joseph Stalin has died. The rest of the party members struggle to figure out how to handle his funeral, each pushing off the responsibility on the other. Amidst this, a power struggle emerges for the next chairman of the Soviet Party. I watched this movie with my father, who grew up in the USSR. There were many moments which I found absurd and ridiculous, which he explained were actual behavior exhibited by people due to their paranoia that they're being spied on. The movie is incredibly funny. It portrays these ruthless and terrible men as squabbling children, but the end grounds it back in reality, reminding us of their heartlessness. It is a great satire that sometimes gets dark when the realism of the situation lurks back in. Kiss Kiss Bang Bang was a movie I knew nothing about going in, and I'll try to keep this review as spoiler-free as possible. The movie is best described as a comedy mystery akin to The Nice Guys or The Big Lebowski. It stars Robbert Downey Jr. as the narrator and Van Kilmer as a gay private investigator. I swear, Kilmer can only play subtly or outright gay characters. Anyways, the two have an incredible chemistry and dynamic. Every time they were on screen together or talking on the phone, it was hilarious to watch. If the movie was just this, it would be perfect. But in the main trio, they decided to add a romantic interest for the lead. The scenes with her felt more like a stereotypical rom-com, detracting a bit from the style and feel of the rest of the film. It's not that she's an unnecessary character, she's the catalyst of the whole mystery. It's just that her scenes were kinda I appreciate that The Nice Guys, which I think was heavily inspired by this movie, changed her character to the daughter of one of the detectives, as this makes the premise funny by default. I know I might have undersold this movie. However, Kiss Kiss Bang Bang is a really fresh and hilarious action mystery comedy. The mystery element is well written. It feels almost Chinatown-like, where each new clue completely muddles our understanding of the situation. and Van Kilmer and Robbert Downey Jr. with their dialogue carry the movie on their shoulders. It's a joy to watch, especially if you have liked similar films. I am really surprised that it's not a more popular film, as it has all the ingredients of a cult classic. Louis de Funès is like the French Jim Carrey or Mr. Bean, an incredible comedy actor with an extensive filmography. I grew up watching his films like Wing or the Thigh or his Le Gendarme series, and so I include this next movie because I think he deserves recognition outside of France for his incredible performance. The Mad Adventures of Rabbi Jacob is a movie where Rabbi Jacob becomes relevant only around the halfway point. Louis de Funès, a successful and rich owner of a manufacturing plant, notices a kidnapping by accident. The kidnapped guy escapes and takes Louis as a hostage. The rest of the movie plays out as a bizarre chase between the cops, the kidnappers, and Louis and his captor. To escape them, they impersonate two rabbis and get caught up in all sorts of misadventures. One major issue I have with Louis de Funès films is that the rest of the cast struggles to keep up with his energy and comedic acting. As such, a lot of scenes without him aren't as funny, at least to me. This is the reason I did not include a much more highly rated film with him, Don't Look Now, We're Being Shot At. It had significant time dedicated to the supporting cast and not as much with Louis de Funès. Hence why I would recommend The Mad Adventures of Rabbi Jacob as the film to introduce yourself with to his acting. I read in the comments some people complaining about some of the more racist humor present. Yes, it is there, but it's mostly in the first act as a way to show the bigotry of the main character, who throughout the movie grows and accepts other people and their cultures and religion. If you are into films, you probably have heard of the next movie's director. Every YouTube channel and film student swears how Emir Kusturica's Underground is one of their favorite works. But I have always struggled to pick one I like better between his Underground and his Crna Maca Beli Macor or Black Cat White Cat. Yes, one is this epic allegory about the West Balkan people from World War II to the 2000s. But the other one is this very whimsical, upbeat comedy full of caricature characters. The movie primarily centers around a gypsy arranged wedding, which isn't really liked by the groom and the bride. But just to get there, we go through a failed train heist, a romance story, and a lot of dynamic scenes. Every character is memorable and hilarious on their own. And the music is sublime. Gordon Bregovic does not miss when it comes to creating a Balkan soundtrack. Definitely watch this comedy if you have liked movies like Snatch or some of Wes Anderson's works. And if you ever meet a Serbian, tell them you liked this movie and they will instantly love you for it. The Taste of Tea is an acquired taste. A slow, fragmented, absurdist comedy. I will admit, of all the films on this list, I found this one the least funny. It had its funny moments that I enjoyed a lot, but the movie is a bit more whimsically dramatic than anything else. Through a series of short scenes, we get exposed to the different characters and their quirks. A young girl who is always watched over by a giant version of herself. A zany and wacky old man doing weird dances and songs. A music producer who as a kid was followed by the ghost of a dead Yakuza member with a shit on his head. But I think of all the movies on this list, this one is the most visually impressive. Excluding the myriad of surreal visuals, even the mundane shots are beautiful. We often have multiple stories happening within the same frame, separated in foreground and background. I will highly recommend this movie to you. Come for the absurdist comedy, stay for the beautiful cinematography and heartfelt story. The last of obscure comedies is, well, not that obscure. It has elevated itself to a cult classic. Yet I have met many people who didn't know The Princess Bride, a subtle parody of some medieval stories. We follow the romantic story between Wesley, a Zorro-like bandit, and the fiancée of the local lord. Their love is challenged and tried as they keep being separated from each other just when they get close together. Adventure, epic duos, and plenty of comedy is the triumphant result of this story. The movie also features a colorful cast of very memorable characters. We even see a great performance from the legendary Andre the Giant. It is very difficult to not like this movie. If you are ever stuck with someone not knowing what to watch and one of you hasn't seen The Princess Bride, put it on immediately. I saw it only recently and fell in love with it. It's an amazing movie, and the funniest scene in the film was actually so funny it required several days of reshoots because the cast and crew could not stop laughing. So imagine how many better takes there were that are now lost in time. This concludes my list of 10 obscure comedies I found on Letterboxd. Most of them were new to me. All of them were really funny and a joy to watch. Of course, you might not like some of them. Comedy and preferences are subjective. Still, give the rest a try. By sheer coincidence, I managed to collect a very diverse list of subgenres and stories. I think there is at least one movie for everyone. This project took a while to do because I had to physically sit through over 100 films to rate and rank them. If you want to support other such ventures, please consider leaving a like and subscribing. Also, if you want to stay up to date on all the projects I do, consider joining our dedicated Discord community. Thank you again for watching, and I will see you in the next video.